not quite ready to call it a podcast just yet, but this may be a small step in that direction. Who knows? But I'm here with my dear friend and colleague, Antonio Elefano. He has a huge, very competitive, I might add, Oscar pool that he hosts every year. And he's probably only about one of like maybe 3-4 friends that I have who can obsess over the Oscars as much as I do. So I'm super happy to have him here today to just to chat about the Oscars and talk about our predictions.
Nerd out is right.
Yeah. Yes. So I guess I should say, how are you doing? Are you ready to nerd out about the Oscars?
I am. Absolutely. What a strange and exciting year to be talking about the categories this year. So yeah, let's dig in.
Yeah. Especially recent developments have just thrown everything into chaos. So I'm super
I know. I thought it was all set. My ballot was all set in terms of at least what I thought was going to win, and now it's all chaos. But that's exciting. Yeah.
All right. So here's what we're going to do. Antonio and I are going to go category by category through what we call the Big 8. So that's 4 acting categories, 2 screenplay categories, director, and best picture. And for each of those, we're going to discuss who we think will win, so our predictions for Oscars night, and then who we think should win. And I would say that anytime I talk to anybody about Oscar predicting, rule number 1 is separate from your head from your heart, right?
Yeah.
And I think the big mistake people often make is they just choose the ones that they like, and they're not plugged into sort of like that who will win might be very different than who should win.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think every year, when I do like the Oscar pool, people tell me like, oh, I didn't watch enough of the movies to guess. And I'm like, that's probably helpful. Right. I mean,
yes.
There, in terms of like the tea leaves for figuring out that stuff, it's not about, what your personal preferences are. It's often much more straightforward than that. Although again, this year it's tricky this year.
It is. There's a lot more kind of like guesswork probably involved, or just like gambling.
Yeah.
Than there otherwise would be. But yeah, I think my problem is actually the opposite. I listen to podcasts about Oscars more than I have time to watch the actual Oscars movies. And so, yeah, for predicting, that works in my favor. But for a couple of these categories, I feel like I had a hard time being like, am I qualified to say who should win this? Because I don't know if I've seen all of these. So yeah, we'll get to that when we come to it. All right. Should we get started?
Yeah. So first, we're going to start Best Supporting Actress, which actually is an incredibly difficult category to pick, both in terms of actually, I think who will win, but then also who should win, I think is also tricky because it's just a strong category.
Yeah, it's a good group. So the most recent development for this that made this completely chaotic is SAG went to Jamie Lee Curtis, who I think was not really at the top of everybody's prediction list. I think before that, Carrie Condon had won the BAFTA. Before that, Angela Bassett had won, I think, Golden Globes, which she had started off the season with as the front runner. And everyone kind of presumed that she was going to keep going, and then she just didn't. And so now I feel like she's not in anybody's top spot for will win. But yeah, who do you think is going to win? Like who's?
So I thought Angela Bassett too, up until I mean, honestly, even through the BAFTAs, I thought Angela Bassett was still, because I thought fine. Like the BAFTAs go with the Irish movie. That's totally fine. But when I watched the Screen Actors Guild and saw the reception for Jamie Lee Curtis, who by all accounts is a very popular, well-loved actress in Hollywood, I thought, it's probably it's going to be a career win, and but we had the wrong career tapped for it, right? It's gonna.
I love that.
I think it's probably gonna go to Jamie Lee Curtis. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm leaning that way right now too, just because oftentimes in this last leg of the Oscars race, it's about momentum and passion picks, right? Amongst voters, because voting starts tomorrow, right? Yeah. And so the SAG is the last kind of big televised precursor that's on people's minds. And I feel like you could definitely sense like Everything Everywhere All at Once swept the SAG. So I feel like it's, Jamie Lee Curtis, I think probably needs to be the front runner now because of that. And because like everything you just said, right? Like people want to give this to her. They want her to have an Oscar, more apparently than they want Angela Bassett to have an Oscar. Which I feel like might be, I don't know, how you fall on that is is debatable. But yeah, I have her as my will win right now, though I'm not confident because I feel like I keep going back to Glenn Close because that was our last predicted career Oscar anointment. Like, oh, we need to give you one of these before it's too late here. Even though no one's seen The Wife. And so I feel like that's one thing that's kind of making me nervous about picking her, because she might not be able to push over the finish line. Like that narrative might not be coming across like the way that we think it is right now. So
yeah, I mean, to be honest, of the potential career wins here, I would favor Angela Bassett. I do think that there's a little bit in the Oscar voters' mind, a little bit of a prejudice against Marvel, the Marvel movies. So I could see that certain voters might resist the victory here for Bassett. I mean, she's incredible, and I think the best part of that movie. But at the end of the day, when you look at what that movie is compared to some of to these other performances, I don't know. I think that Curtis allows them to reward a wonderful career and a movie that they obviously really love. We haven't talked about the other nominees quite as much. I do think Carrie Condon is incredible and was the best.
She's so good.
Finisher. And if, based on performance alone, I would probably put my vote for her. That's probably who I think should win. Although I think Hong Chow was also the best part of The Whale. Now that's a little bit, we'll talk about The Whale. That's kind of faint praise for me. but
that's the end of your good words about The Whale. But I actually haven't still, that's the next in my queue to catch up on this.
I'll be very curious to what you think of The Whale. So I think it's going to go to Curtis. I am not at all certain, but this is also a category where honestly any of the five could win. And if people wrote in Dolly De Leon and she won, I would be happy to, because it's such a strong category, and I like all of these actresses, and I think they did really good work. So it's kind of an embarrassment of riches in this particular category.
Yeah, I'm with you. I just watched Triangle of Sadness the other day, and I'm totally with you on the Dolly De Leon. She's like the one thing that makes that movie work. So like I now understand. I think I remember when the nominations came out, a lot of people being confused and disappointed why she wasn't on there, and I get it now. I totally get it. My pick is actually for who should win. Is Stephanie Hsu. And I totally get why she wouldn't win, because typically if there's I hate the word ingenue, but everybody uses that word to describe newer actresses or younger actresses. But she, like, this is her big break, right? And so I can understand them wanting to wait and be like, oh, okay, like we'll get you next time, or like, you still have time. So I totally get why she wouldn't win, but I feel like it feels very weird to me for all the love for Everything Everywhere All at Once, and especially in all these acting categories, and she's the one who's gonna not get anything, right? Like, because I feel like she, in a lot of ways, is the core of that movie, right? Like she kind of is like, she's the gravitational pull for the story. And she's so awesome in it. So that's probably my pick, but I would support Carrie Condon as well. I also feel like from a prediction standpoint, just if people have been tuning into the televised awards, just seeing her, she has very good Oscar clips, like her scenes that they're showing from Banshees. If you haven't seen Banshees, but you just watch those, I can definitely see that being like, oh, like that. I mean, maybe not. That's not enough to convince someone to vote for her, but that would be enough to get them to go watch Banshees and then maybe vote for her later.
And in a movie that's incredibly well written, she has the best lines in the movie.
Yeah.
I mean, so, but I do feel like it's going to go to one of the two veterans. And I think it's going to be Curtis. So again, I'd prefer Bassett here. All right, so we have to supporting actor. Supporting actor, I think, is much more straightforward.
Yeah, this is pretty easy. Mostly certainty. I feel like, so this would have been a sweep for Ki Hye Kwan, except BAFTA, right? Like Barry Keoghan won BAFTA, which threw everyone into a tizzy to be like, oh no, like the streak has been broken. What does this mean? But I think SAG kind of put us back on course in terms of like, yes, this is happening. I feel like he's got everything. Like at this point, he's got it. To me, it reminds me a lot of Troy Kotzer from last year, who just like kept winning and winning. And then with every speech, kept winning more. You know what I mean? Like his speeches have been great. He hasn't just used the same material. Like the speech has been thematically consistent, but I think have been varied and actually like in terms of the actual words he's saying. So I think I was listening. Yeah, go ahead. I was listening to Next Best Picture, and Matt Neglia on there said something like the speeches have been really, even though he's kind of talking about the same things in every speech, they feel fresh and genuine every time, which I feel like is helping him a lot.
I agree. I think that there's an exuberance about him that is sort of irresistible, and that also sort of matches his character in the movie. I think that it's a vote that everyone can feel happy about. And so, you know, I in this category, there are some strong performances in the category along with it, but I think that this is the easiest one to predict in that. It would shock me if he didn't take home this one.
I also just feel like the internet's going to revolt if he doesn't at this point. You know, I mean, people are going to be flipping tables.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I was happy to see Barry Keoghan win at BAFTA, like if only because I thought that was the second best performance in Banshees. I thought his scene with Carrie Condon toward the end of that movie was just absolutely heartbreaking. And so I'm glad that he came away with something in the award season. And sometimes it's just nice. There's so many awards, right? And you see the same actor win every single one, but I never really thought that he was a threat to win at the Oscars, even after BAFTA. I'm curious to know, like, so I prefer Barry Keoghan's performance over Brendan Gleeson's in the Banshees of Inisherin, even though both are great performances. How do you feel between those two?
Oh, that's a good question. I feel like I'm with you. I like Barry Keoghan. I feel like because if you think about, like, Brendan Gleeson has more to work with in terms of his character. You know what I mean? Like he's the brooding kind of like he's the impetus for all the conflict in the movie. Yeah. I feel like he has kind of an easier job. Whereas Barry Keoghan, it's like really, I feel like since his character is a simpleton.
Yeah.
Right. It's really hard to play that in and then also be complex, right? And not be sort of like a joke or a caricature. Yeah. Which I definitely think he was not. So yeah, I'm with you that I feel like, but again, it's one of those things where it's like, I think everyone thought Brendan, if someone were from that movie were going to win in this category, it would be Brendan Gleeson because he's the older actor. He's been around longer, right?
It's the meteor role. I mean, Barry Keoghan's is definitely a supporting role, right? But yeah,
that's true. Brendan Gleeson is like kind of category fraud.
Kind of, right? They're
or it's like in between.
It's in between, yeah. So I'm fine with that. I thought that I don't know if you've seen Causeway. I did watch Causeway. I thought Brian Tyree Henry was reliably excellent in that movie, but the movie itself was fine.
I haven't seen it.
It was fine. It was a fine Jennifer Lawrence performance. And he was good in it, but I don't think enough Oscar voters.
Do you think Judd? I think I know the answer, but do you think Judd Hirsch should be on here at all?
No, I mean I think that I think if you're going to nominate anyone from the Fabelmans, I think, including like in any category for performance, I think it should have been Paul Dano. I think that you know, it's an understated role. He didn't have the scenery chewing scene. I mean, Judd Hirsch only had the scene, right? But what Paul Dano has to do throughout the course of this movie, I think, is also just really heartbreaking and
right. And he has the one subtle role in a sea of very flat, like next to Michelle Williams' performance. You know what I mean? Like, so.
Yeah, so I definitely don't think that he should be on the list, but
and I feel like he falls into the category of like, can we really call? Because I feel like people argue over, can we call this a cameo versus a supporting actor role? And I feel like he really toes that line because he's literally in the movie for like 8 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are examples in like Oscar history of like of really short performances winning. Like we're going way into history here. Like Network, I feel like there was a Beatrice something Straight. Maybe. And then Judi Dench, I think also, right, was a pretty short performance, but okay. Oh, sorry, my phone.
You're good. You're good.
Okay. Okay.
Can I also say that, like, from a campaigning perspective, Ke Huy Quan he's just been like he's like has the perfect campaign, because it's just all he's doing is like excitedly taking selfies with everybody.
Yeah.
And it's just it's getting the job done, and I love it.
I agree. I feel very confident about him there. Now here's where I'm almost certain we're going to diverge a bit. And it's just a wild category is best actress. I mean, best actress is wild for a lot of reasons, for including like who didn't make the nominee list, who did make the nominee. It's like surprisingly.
Right. The Andrea Riseborough of it all.
The Andrea Riseborough. Have you seen To Leslie?
I have not. Have you?
I did. I watched it on a plane. I wanted to make sure to watch all the ones for the major categories, and I was curious too. It was actually on a plane. We both obviously went to a conference recently in Chicago, so on the way there, I saw it as a choice on the plane. I was like, I should be doing work. I should be preparing for this conference, but I'm going to watch this movie that everyone's gotten behind. I thought it was a very fine performance in a movie that makes Causeway look like Top Gun Maverick, because it's I don't know anyone who saw it before the nominations came out. But it's also a very familiar character and arc, where you have alcoholic, recovering alcoholic, and who's alienating her family, and then her sort of recovery and redemption. It is a very good performance, but I feel like the nomination is the win here for her. I'm gonna go. We're gonna have our thing about our top two, I think, but I'm gonna talk about Ana de Armas and Michelle Williams. I loathed Blonde. To me, it answered the question, what if someone did The Passion of the Christ but with Marilyn Monroe?
That sounds horrible. I haven't. Admittedly, I said at the beginning that I'm way behind on the movies, but more up on the Oscar race. And this is the category where this is the most true, because I haven't seen Blonde. I feel like I haven't seen it because I've only heard bad things about it.
I mean, I just needed to complete the movie. So I watched what felt like 12 hours of this movie. I had to watch it over the course of days because it was just so painful to watch. Not because like the acting was bad, but because I just didn't understand why this movie existed. Right? This sort of fictionalized account of Marilyn Monroe, and just watching, I don't know, this the suffering that this woman, but again, a fictionalized version of her was going through on the screen. It was just it's hard to watch. So I'm also not a big fan of I love Michelle Williams and I love her work. I think that Brokeback Mountain, Wendy and Lucy, Manchester by the Sea, I think that she's one of our best actors. But I did not like the character of Mitzi and the Fabelmans. So to me, that was a performance that a lot of people didn't think was going to get nominated, because it didn't make Screen Actors Guild, it didn't make the BAFTA list, but it ultimately made its way here. But to me, it comes down to the last two. But before I leave, I feel like I should give you an opportunity. I think that you like the Fabelmans more than I did. So and I assume you like Michelle Williams' performances more than I did too.
Yeah, I think I did. I mean, I definitely see the criticism that her performance is not as complex, and she's kind of just like playing up this idea of her being like overly dramatic and kind of whimsical and eccentric, and I totally get that. I think in general, just I like when I was watching the Fabelmans overall, because I'm such a big fan of Spielberg and a lot of classic Spielberg movies, that I was just caught up in the storytelling of it, yes, like tell me why Spielberg is such a genius. And so but I could definitely see kind of some of the criticism, and it's definitely out of all the best picture ones, it's not even near the top of my list for sure. Her performance, I feel like, is in certain scenes very good.
Sure.
Like in the scene where she's in, like, she is in the closet, like goes into the closet, and then Spielberg stand-in, his character sort of reveals something that he's discovered. And then
Yeah.
I guess I don't want to spoil it. Are we not? I guess we're not doing spoilers, Chris. I hadn't thought about it, but
that was a very touching moment. I know exactly what you're talking about. But to me, that taps into what makes Michelle Williams a great actress, right? Like it's a very real like moment, this that she's having a real connection with another human being. Whereas a lot of like, I mean, she's acting with a monkey at a certain point in the movie, right? And so
right. A lot of the scenes where it's like, oh, there's mom again. She's so eccentric, right? Yeah, I can definitely see how that could be too much.
But none of these actresses are going to win the prize.
And also like the two that you just mentioned are like I guess so the big controversy is that Viola Davis for Woman King and Daniel Day-Lewis for Till did not make it in here. And so most of that ire has been directed at Andrea Riseborough to say that her kind of quote unquote grassroots campaign is what kind of knocked them out. But I would ask, like, if they are in here, who do you knock out?
Oh, I knock out Anna de Armas and Michelle Williams.
Okay. Michelle Williams, yeah. Okay.
That's who I would, right? And I'll admit, I like The Woman King a lot. I love Viola Davis and just about everything that she does. I think that Viola Davis should be on the list. I haven't seen Till mostly because it just looks so wrenching. And so, but I have no doubt that it's an excellent performance, and I have no doubt that I would like it more than either of those two performances. But yeah,
none of them are winning.
None of them are winning. It's a Michelle Yeoh versus Cate Blanchett, right? And I forecasted that this would be where we would diverge, but this isn't because like we dislike either of the two performances. I love Michelle Yeoh, and I've loved her for since Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, so I think that that with her Screen Actors Guild win, it makes it much more likely right now. It's just a dead heat now, right? I feel like people said it was a dead heat before the Screen Actors Guild, and I thought that was a little premature.
Yeah.
But now it definitely is, right? Like the actors clearly love Everything Everywhere All at Once. They clearly love Michelle Yeoh in Everything, and she's the center of that movie, right? But to me, Cate Blanchett's performance in Tar was just the kind of thing where like it just haunts me, right? And I can play back scenes and images from that movie, and it just feels like one of those performances that just can't be denied. Now that being said, like there have been plenty of years in which I've thought that there was just a performance that just couldn't lose just based on merit alone, like Julianne Moore for Far From Heaven, for example, right? But they do, right? For a lot of reasons. And this is not an example of this is not like a Sandra Bullock versus Meryl Streep year where I'm going to just be like, at the end of it.
Right. You're not going to be mad either way.
I'm not going to be mad either way because they're both incredible performances. They're the best two performances in this category. But I think so for my should win, I think it's Cate Blanchett. There's not a narrative around Cate Blanchett in terms of like she really needs that third Oscar.
I know. In fact, right? It's working in the opposite direction. Where of
course it is. And it's not like, and even at I think the Critics' Choice, she even sort of called out like the awards like silliness of like award season. But I don't know. I feel like there's people like the movie Tar. And I feel like this is maybe the only category that Tar might actually take. And Tar also doesn't exist without Cate Blanchett. Like, I think quite literally it doesn't exist without Cate Blanchett. I don't think Todd Field would have made the movie without her. And so that's why I think that she should win. I actually think that she will win. There are a lot of years in which Screen Actors Guild has diverged from BAFTA. And in fact, they involved Viola Davis a couple of times, right? With Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, losing to Frances McDormand, and then Meryl Streep, right? She The Help, and then Meryl Streep won at the Oscars. So I think it's going to go to Cate Blanchett, but I'm much less confident in that prediction than I was like 3 days ago.
Yeah, so this is the category that's stressing me out the most, which is crazy because we're about to get to Best Actor, and that's also very stressful.
Oh,
but
yeah.
This
Definitely.
one's stressing me out the most because my Oscars puzzle doesn't match up with the narrative and the sort of momentum that Everything Everywhere All at Once is now has had all season, right? The movie came out this time last year, so it's incredible that it's like a front runner right now at all. And so the idea that it's like been chugging along this whole time and in contention this whole time, and now just in the last leg seems to, after SAG, seems to have had this big sweep of momentum. Is pulling me towards Michelle Yeoh win. But then I look at my other predictions and I'm like, nothing, Tar's not winning anything. Yeah. And I totally agree with you that if someone is going to be like, ooh, like Tar's great, like, why am I not voting for Tar anywhere? They're going to give it to Cate Blanchett because she is that movie.
Yeah.
They're going to like associate the movie with her performance. And so that's why right now I have her winning. But every time I look at it, I'm like, no, it's wrong.
I mean, it's a fortunate circumstance when watching the Oscars if like who you think will win, if you think who will win loses, but then the runner up is someone you actually want to win.
Yeah.
That's sort of the ideal, right?
And that's why I might stay like this way with will win, because I want Michelle Yeoh to win, and so I would rather be pleasantly surprised rather than disappointed and also like this is the one category where I feel like I'm being blinded by my love for Michelle Yeoh. And like I love Cate Blanchett too, and she's incredible. She's phenomenal. I agree that this is probably her career best performance.
Which is crazy.
It's so insane because I feel like we've said that a bunch of times before with other things. And so, but my heart wants Michelle Yeoh to win because I feel like she doesn't have an Oscar. This is probably her one chance to get one. I've been a fan of hers, like you, like since Crouching Tiger. Like I've just been a huge fan of hers all along, and I want her to have this, right? So like this is the one time where I'm like in favor of the career Oscar. And that Cate Blanchett already has 2, and she's
young enough to where there could be more.
And I've definitely heard people say that based on interviews, especially I think the 2 of them actually did like a Inside the Actors kind of thing together, right? That it seemed like Cate Blanchett she's like, no, like I don't need any more. You should have this. So that's, but right now I'm going to predict Cate Blanchett still, and then hopefully I can be pleasantly surprised with Michelle
as you were at SAG.
Yes. Yeah. I was super happy because I really thought that it was over for her. And that Cate Blanchett was gonna take it. But yeah, we'll see. This is a real nail biter. I feel like, like you said, it's really even. It could go either way. And it really I feel like it hinges on how big a night Everything Everywhere is gonna have.
Yeah. Everything Everywhere has made its way through like the guilds now, right? It's won the Producers Guild, it won the Directors Guild, it won Screen Actors Guild. So to me, it's unstoppable in picture. But it's also because the category the performance categories have been so unpredictable. That feels like it favors a little bit of a spread the wealth year, where people are going to want to reward more than just 1 or 2 films. So that's why I'm going to stick with Blanchett. But I'll be perfectly happy if Yeoh wins as well. I'll not be happy if Ana de Armas wins. But I don't think we're gonna have that problem.
Do you think both of them have been campaigning? Because that I can't, like Michelle Yeoh is definitely campaigning. But I'm not sure Cate Blanchett is.
Cate Blanchett, she's doing interviews. I see a lot of interviews about Tar, right? And so they're not campaigning in the sense of like what I typically think of, like the where you go to like a lot of like talk shows and talk up the movie. I mean, Tar came out a long time ago, and it's also not the Melissa Leo
right
campaign, like the photo. So I don't, but I do think she's at the very least she's supporting the movie, right?
That's what I think it is she's inadvertently campaigning for herself because she's championing the movie.
But she even at the Critics' Choice, she gave that speech where she sort of like again was calling out the award season.
Right. She's like, why are we pitting women against each other anyway?
Yeah, you know, she has like, she says like, oh, they're just in dialogue with one another, and that's all well and good. But you know, someone's gonna pick up a trophy. And they're gonna, and you know, Kate Blanchett's been showing up to the awards. I think there was one award show. She didn't come to the Critics' Choice, I think, right? But like, she's been showing up to the award shows, right? So, yeah, this is a tough category. But now we're going to go into another tough category, with Best Actor. So here, I think I'm going to do what you did with Best Actress, kind of, right? And I'm going to pick that what will win will be a performance that I actually do not want to win, even though I like Brendan Fraser a lot. I like him a lot, but I watched The Whale, and I thought that performance was so big that actual whales were like, that's a little much. And so, you know, I think that there's I watched his speech at the Screen Actors Guild, and I think also the Critics' Choice. Where I think it was, at least at the Critics' Choice, I think it was a little bit of a surprise, right? I think that a lot of people were expecting Colin Farrell maybe to win that one. So I think that it makes sense to me that the actors are supporting Brendan Fraser, and to me, this is, I thought that originally I thought this was sort of a 3-horse race with Colin Farrell and Austin Butler. Now I think it's Austin Butler versus Brendan Fraser.
It's incredible how Colin Farrell has just dropped out of the running so quickly.
Kind of unfortunate too. Like I think his performance was tricky. The best lines in the movie are not his though, right? And his character, I think it's hard to play to be the lead and the sort of like dim bulb kind of character.
Right, he has to kind of be both the straight man to Brendan Gleeson.
Exactly.
And the protagonist. Yeah, it's a hard role. And I feel like he does a great job. He's actually my should win. Because for that reason, because I feel like he is really at the center of the movie. He has kind of the most like thankless role, like the least flashy role. And a lot of, and his performance is subtler, right, than all the other characters, I think. So and I was just really excited for him to get an Oscar, because you know, he's been doing really great work across the board. Like I really loved him in the Batman. Right, a totally different role, but like I just feel like I was ready for him to get an Oscar, and now after BAFTA I feel like it's a done deal. Like he's not.
If he couldn't win BAFTA, like if after Banshees did what it did at that ceremony, then I feel like there's no way that it's going to happen here.
What do you think? And I feel like people are, what I'm realizing from the precursors is that people have decided sort of what we were saying, like he doesn't have the standout role. Like he's essential to the movie. But he doesn't get all the good lines, like you were saying, Carrie Condon does and stuff, right?
Yeah. What do you think of Austin Butler and Elvis?
So, Elvis. I think, I have some thoughts and feelings about Elvis. So, Austin Butler in Elvis is great. He's the only thing working in that movie, to be honest. And I actually feel more that way, because the comp I often hear is between Elvis and Bohemian Rhapsody, right? Because it's a similar thing of like, famous musician biopic. The movie's not that critically well received, but you know, people really love it because they love the musical artist that the movie's about, right? And that kind of clouds their judgment, or they're willing to overlook a lot of things. You know, I'm susceptible to that as well. But I really feel like Austin Butler was a great Elvis in a bad movie about Elvis. And so I'm conflicted about it. I definitely would not be picking him. Like I think who's my number 2? I actually didn't, in terms of should win. I don't know if I know that right now.
For me,
it probably would be Bill Nighy.
Yeah, I loved him. I'll talk about that in a second. Let me say one thing about Austin Butler. To me, that film was so disjointed that it was hard to piece together a coherent character, even despite Austin Butler's best efforts. And I know you hate the term ingenue, but let's use it for a man. I think you can use it for a man. So Austin Butler's kind of the ingenue, right? Like he's a new face. He's like, I think that there might be a feel. So even though I think it's between the two of them, I think Fraser will ultimately take it, if for no other reason than, well, at least partly because Austin Butler sort of like is a new fresh face. There'll be other opportunities to award him. Also, in the speeches that he gave, right, he's been using his Elvis voice, which I found slightly distasteful.
Right. It sort of depends on where voters land on the voice thing, because I feel like on the one hand, it's not good, right? To be like, come on, dude, like use your regular voice. Like you're not Elvis anymore. Like it's okay. And then he had to kind of come out and say like, oh, it feels, I think I heard somebody compare it to Lady Gaga in House of Gucci, where Lady Gaga had all these interviews where she sort of talked about the mental anguish of preparing for this character and to playing this role, and it backfired, right? That people were like, come on. And I feel like this has the possibility, or could really go the other way. So like him being like, Elvis became a part of me, right? Like, and then that narrative, his response to why he still has a little bit of the voice left, I feel like doesn't work for some people, but might really work for other people. And same thing with him referencing the Presley family and Lisa Marie Presley's death, and how she really loved the movie and she was so thankful that he got to play this role.
Yeah.
Again, it could cut either way. It could be any press is good press, and like he has a lot of attention because of that. And people are like wrapped up in the narrative of like, yes, he honored this great icon of music history before his daughter died or whatever. Right. Or you could be like, that's in poor taste.
I mean, look, and there's support for Elvis, right? Like Elvis got some nominations down the line here. And so it's I could definitely see him winning, given that he won. I mean, it was the BAFTAs, it was especially, right?
Yeah.
A surprising win. My should win for this is between Nai and Mescal for After Sun. And both are clearly like the more they were subtler performances. They were very understated, but lovely. And ultimately for me, just had more an effect on me than any of the other three. Like Nai's performance just had me bawling at the end of Living. And then Mescal, I think by a hair, I might actually pick Mescal. I thought that that just one wounded expression of his in that movie said more to me than like all of like the caterwauling of like the whale. So, but neither.
I gotta watch The Whale. I'm so curious because like what you're saying about it makes me so cute. Now I want to kind of like hate watch it.
Well, one other thing is that Brendan Fraser's character plays a writing professor, and so there are lots of reasons that I dislike the movie, but part of it is also his portrayal of like what writing professors do.
Oh, okay.
So you'll see.
Okay, so we're not impartial when it comes to that.
We're not impartial. No.
Okay. So to make it clear, my will win is actually Austin Butler.
Okay.
Because even though I'm really not confident about it.
Yeah.
Part of me is like BAFTA was a surprise. Part of me is like people just really like him. He's the it actor right now.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think people will want to reward his performance in that movie. And I don't know. It's part of it actually is just kind of it. I often don't use like a gut check to predict the Oscars. I feel like that leads to madness, but this one I'm just like, I feel like it's going to be him. And I feel like people are going to be upset about it. Right. They're going to be salty that Brendan Fraser didn't win or something like that. Right. But, and the other thing too, is I feel like in Ki Hye Kwan, we already have the comeback narrative checked. Yeah. And I feel like people are going to be less likely. Like, I feel to me, Brendan Fraser's win at SAG feels more like a SAG thing.
Fair enough. Yeah. He did win at the Critics' Choice though, too. Right. Like the critics preferred that, which is kind of surprising too. Right. But I after BAFTA, I mean, we texted, right, and we were all fairly certain that it was Austin Butler's. So I could definitely see Austin Butler.
The other thing too is like acting recently has paired with makeup.
Yeah,
and that's also what's making me really conflicted. But I feel like like it could be The Whale gets makeup and Brendan Fraser wins actor. It could also be Elvis gets makeup and Austin Butler gets Best Actor. And I feel like since Elvis has a Best Picture nomination and The Whale doesn't, that indicates less support for the movie in general. And so I feel like that pairing is less likely to occur. Also, I feel like the makeup in Elvis is just so like extra. Whereas with the whale, it is that classic sort of actor transformation that oftentimes wins makeup, but it's also like very prosthetic heavy and less I don't know. I shouldn't pretend to know a lot about makeup and stuff, but to me, I can see people being like, oh, like Austin Butler's wearing lots of eyeshadow. Check. You know what I mean? As opposed to like viewing Brendan Fraser as a makeup win.
Yeah. I will say though that the last It Boy versus like a, established actor that I recall was the Gary Oldman, Timothée Chalamet year, which wasn't that long ago. And
right.
Did Gary Oldman, I don't know if Darkest Hour won makeup. Maybe. I don't know. I don't remember. I mean, Gary Oldman definitely won Best Actor though. And I
think you're right. So that's a good poll.
Yeah, maybe. I'd prefer Butler to Fraser. But so I'm going to predict Fraser and then just be happy if I'm wrong, and then just be happy if I'm right, just because I was right, not because I wanted it to happen for this category. But it's such a weird year.
So Darkest Hour did win
makeup.
Yep.
Okay, so maybe.
So. Oh, now I want to change it. I reserve the right to change it like the day before.
Oh, of course. Meryl Streep definitely won makeup, right? The dark, not the Iron Lady, right? That definitely won makeup too. So I
was thinking more of Renee Zellweger and Judy, and last year Jessica Chastain and Isa Taney.
Oh yeah, there you go. Right, like that's. So
I feel like that's where the Austin Butler Elvis win fits in.
Yeah. All right, original screenplay. So this is I'm going to rule out The Fabelmans and Triangle of Sadness for me personally, and also for the will win. I don't think that either of those will probably win. I think The Fabelmans has more support than I am exhibiting for the movie, but I don't think that screenplay is the place where it would be rewarded. Triangle of Sadness, again, I think this is I think I like this movie more than you did, but even I, who liked it, recognized that it was a pretty bloated film.
When I started watching it and I saw the runtime, I was like, what? I can't watch this all in one sitting. What are you doing?
Yeah, no, and that's fair. I think what will win is Banshees. I think that the acid dialogue of it alone is will propel it to the win, and also I think this is the most likely category for it to take, right? I think it's entirely possible that Everything Everywhere All at Once will take it too. If it takes this category, I don't know when, what the order is going to be, but screenplays sometimes happen early in the night. If Everything Everywhere wins here, then I feel like you're about to watch a steamboat.
Right. That's setting the tone for a sweep.
It's Michelle Yeoh. That means actress is flipped. It means everything is. But I think it's going to go to Banshees, even though for me personally, I think I would go with Tar. I think that was a really I think that's a movie that the movie I'm most likely to rewatch 10 years from now, and I'd love to see Todd Field win. It's not going to happen. It's between Everything Everywhere and Banshees, which again are two excellent screenplays, but I think it's going to go to Banshees. What do you think?
I agree. And I feel like it's for similar reasons. I think when I was doing my Oscar puzzle, when I was like, I did all my individual category predictions and I zoomed out and looked at which movies were winning which ones. Yeah. I sort of said, okay, Banshees is actually not winning that much.
Yeah.
But this is where it will be able to win. Like, this is the one where people will be like, oh, Banshees had a great screenplay. Let's vote for it there. And then that's where we're going to spread the wealth. And then it's okay that it doesn't win in a bunch of other categories, including a bunch of the acting categories. So, and I think people think of Martin McDonagh as a writer more than a director.
Yeah. He's a playwright, right?
Yeah. He came from playwriting, and also just like that screenplay is really good. Like his writing is amazing. All the dialogue, like you said, the dialogue is so great. And I feel like that's what makes the movie, it invites you to dig into it thematically because of the writing. The writing is the thing
Yeah.
It does this beautiful thing where it's like building its own sort of manifesto about art and life, right, into the conversations these characters have. And so to me, it's actually right now it's my should win and will win.
Okay.
Which is tough because because I do think Everything Everywhere does also have a great screenplay, and also like a much more challenging screenplay to write. Because it's changing settings so quickly and so frequently. But I feel like I would, if I had to choose, if I were being an Oscar voter, I now get the spread the wealth thing. Cause like when I was doing this, I was like, oh, well, I mean, it's going to win so much other stuff. And I really feel like it's more an achievement in directing than writing. For the same thing, for the kind of quick cuts and the multiversal stuff and whatever. So, but I could definitely see Tar. I loved the screenplay for Tar. And I feel like that's the one that should be getting more credit than it will, because it's not as flashy as, like, in terms of literary work, it's not as flashy, right?
Right.
But I would love to see this. I would love to read the screenplay for Tar, because I feel like the visual, like translating all the visuals in the film into words on the page, I feel like I would really love to see what that's like.
Yeah. I mean, Cate Blanchett had those great lines coming from somewhere.
Right, exactly. Oh yeah, and there's so many great monologues that she has in that movie.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. All right, original screenplay. Adapted screenplay. So okay, I'm gonna start from the ones that I think are not likely to win here. So I think Top Gun Maverick is an excellent movie. I thought it was a fine movie, and I thought if Top Gun Maverick had won the Producers Guild Award, there was a chance that it could win Best Picture. So now I think that chance is gone. But I do not think it's going to win screenplay. It'd be weird if Top Gun Maverick, if the thing that it won was for its screenplay. I don't think anyone walked away from that movie talking about that. Glass Onion, I thought was good fun and all it needed to be, but I think is a lightweight compared to the competition. My take on All Quiet on the Western Front, which swept the BAFTAs, right? I thought was a powerful movie. My take on it, though, is that like all anti-war war movies, it's essentially kind of like a horror film, right? It's really reliant on sturdy directing and these memorable sort of set pieces, then in carefully crafted story or dialogue. So I was talking to a friend who thinks that this is actually the favorite, that All Quiet, because All Quiet did so well at the BAFTAs, and there are only so many categories where it is eligible at the Oscars, and then this could be its big win. And I get that. But I don't think it actually will win. I think that what will win is Women Talking, and I think it should win. I loved that movie. I thought, despite a really high degree of difficulty, given the concept, it was an absolute triumph for Sarah Polley. I get some people complain like it's very stagey. The dialogue isn't very, it doesn't make sense given who the characters are, that they would speak in this way. But I feel like it's pretty clear early on in the movie that it's outside of the realm of realism, right? And so once you accept the premise of the movie, which is established fairly early on, and then you just listen to the dialogue and hear and then see these characters, these three-dimensional characters, come to life. It's hard. I found it just incredibly moving, not just moving, but just riveting too, from scene to scene. And to me, just as exciting to watch as like a movie like Top Gun Maverick, which is obviously a very different kind of movie. I also love Living, though, and thought that the screenplay for that, and it has a literary pedigree, obviously. So I thought that lived up to its pedigree. But for me, I think that what will win, it's between Women Talking and All Quiet. I think Women Talking will take it, and that takes away some of the sting of no women being nominated for Best Director, maybe. And I think Women Talking should win it. But I'm very curious on your take on this. I don't know your take on this.
Yeah, I know. So I landed on All Quiet will win.
Yeah.
I feel like people are just assuming Women Talking is going to win, because they're like, well, it has to win something, right? But I feel like they bungled the release of that movie so badly.
Yeah.
And it was, it barely squeaked into Best Picture.
Yeah.
Because no one had seen it. because it wasn't out for a super long time. And yeah, so I feel like people are just kind of presuming that it's going to win because they love it and it's so good, and that they're going to be disappointed because All Quiet's going to win. I feel like we can't ignore the All Quiet momentum.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people are sort of rationalizing its crazy BAFTA wins as, oh, well, like that's just a British thing, right? But I feel like, everyone also at the same time recently has been like, well, the Academy is getting more international. The Academy is getting more global, and their voters are expanding and their tastes are changing because of that. And so I feel like this is what's going to be the result, is that All Quiet is going to overperform on Oscar night. I feel like traditionally a movie like this would only win international feature.
Right.
And that would be, it's like, okay, good job. Like this is what you get. But I feel like we can't really deny how it's been consistently overperforming all season and kind of coming out of nowhere. People are like, what? Like, why is it winning this and this? People were shocked that it won Best Film at BAFTA and not, and that Banshees didn't win, and Banshees only won British Film. So that's kind of my take right now. I feel like in looking for places where All Quiet could upset and surprise, this is the one place I feel like. And also, if we look back at the history of winners, oftentimes this category really favors at adapting classic literary works. And I feel like, everybody had to read All Quiet on the Western Front in high school. You know what I mean? So like, if you're an Oscar voter who's not particularly tuned in and hasn't seen all the movies, you might go for that one because you're like, oh, well, adapted. So it must, All Quiet, is from like a one of the greatest novels of all time. So let's award it here. Yeah. In terms of should win, I'm really torn. I actually would probably go with Living. Because I feel like when I heard the premise for Living before, in anticipation of Sundance, I was like, wait, they're trying to remake an adaptation of Kazuo Ishiguro. Like, what are you doing? Why would you do that? That seems like a fool's errand. And then when I saw the movie, I was like, oh, this is amazing. It's just so good. So because of that, I feel like that in of itself is an achievement in an adaptation, that it was able to give me that upend my expectations in that way. But also I think it would be super fun if Top Gun did win this. Just to choose violence. Like I feel like for people, for people to be all upset about it, because it's not even for me. I could never, even though I love Top Gun, I can never choose it because it's not actually an adaptation. It just is. It's just in here because it's a sequel.
Yes. Yeah,
and it's technically adapted from like a magazine article from the 80s that inspired the original movie. And so like I feel like because I feel like it's category fraud that's in here even.
But you would never want to go up against the original screenplay, right? If you had
no, that's true. Yeah.
So
yeah. So like there should be a sequel or prequel screenplay category, and then it could win. But yeah, I think actually this is a fairly strong category overall, I would say. And like, shout out to Glass Onion. I feel like the most delicious thing about that movie is Rian Johnson's writing and how kind of like witty it is. And it's to some people's taste and not to others, but I really liked it. To me, it wasn't as strong as the original Knives Out.
Yeah.
And especially in terms of it as an intricate mystery.
Yeah.
And so for that reason, I feel like I understand that. Like, I'm glad it got nominated, but it's not necessarily at the top of my list.
Yeah. All right, let's move to director. What do you think about director?
All right, this category has changed so much in the past few weeks.
Yeah.
I feel like after DGA, it became a whole other thing. Yeah. So yeah, for it seemed like Spielberg was going to win for a super long time.
Yep. And
everyone was just like, yeah, obviously Spielberg. Who's going to challenge him? DGA is not going to give it to the Daniels, right? But then they did. And again, I think that's a show of strength for the movie overall. That it keeps kind of surprising people with like, oh, well, that voting body, that guild is not going to reward such like a weird and quirky and original and fresh movie, right? They're more traditionalist. I feel like people said that about DGA, and then they gave it to the Daniels. So I think they're my will win and should win.
They are. I mean, they are for me too. For me, it was between the Daniels and Todd Field for Tar, but while I gave the edge in writing to Field, I think I'll give the edge in directing to the Daniels. I think it's a very high degree of difficulty here. I think it's also like a showier directing than in Tar or any of the other nominees here. I mean, I'll be honest, like I wouldn't, even though The Fabelmans was not my favorite film of the year, I wouldn't mind a Spielberg win, like a career win here. But I don't think it's going to him. I think it's going to who it should go. So
yeah, I actually don't have Fabelmans winning anything right now.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Which seems crazy.
Yeah,
because it's Spielberg. And I really like the career narrative of The Fabelmans. Like in particular, I think it was Spielberg's Golden Globe acceptance speech, where he sort of explained sort of how this movie came about and why he just, and how he really is talking about this is him at his most vulnerable, and really like a lot of it's the product of an introspective push for him to understand sort of why he's made all these other movies that we love. And so I'm a sucker. I'm a sucker for that. And so I was comfortable with him winning. I was like, okay, fine. But I love that. I feel like I love what it would mean for the Daniels to win. In terms of the direction the Academy's going in, and what this opens up for future movies and all that. But I also feel like, like Todd Field. I haven't talked about how much I love Tar. Tar is amazing. Tar is so good. It's so like, haunting was the word that you used earlier. And I feel like that's largely an achievement in direction, like to have subtle things like Lydia Tarr going to check the refrigerator in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Right. To make that a crazy, thrilling, like creepy scene.
Yeah.
I feel like is speaks to the strong directing. So, I mean, it's not going to happen. Do you feel like if Edward Berger were on here instead of Ruben Östlund, that we'd be having a very different conversation?
It's a very good question. Maybe. Yeah, maybe. Because he wasn't nominated for DGA either, right?
Right.
Because that was what I was talking to someone about this earlier. They were like, well, Everything Everywhere has prevailed in all the guilds, but like it didn't go head to head with All Quiet at every one of these at all of these stops, right? But yeah, I think it would be maybe a different conversation. Yeah, I think it's a pretty foregone conclusion. This and honestly our last conversation about Best Picture, right?
Right. Yeah, and the last thing I'll say too is I feel like Triangle of Sadness, in anticipation of nominations coming out, had a lot of buzz and momentum, and it's just totally dropped off, which is really interesting to me. Yeah,
I mean the fact that it got into the Best Director category is pretty impressive. De Leon not getting into supporting actress, I think it's just a statement on the quality of that field. But yeah, there's clearly some support for the movie, but yeah, I don't think it's a threat at all. All right, Best Picture. So Everything Everywhere soon gave me
your rock.
My rock.
Googly-eyed rock.
Googly-eyed rock.
Did you is that like an officially licensed A24 Googly-eyed rock? Or is that you?
It is not. A student gave me this. I think they stole the rock and then put the googly eyes on.
I mean, I don't approve of stealing, but that's the way to go.
That's the way to go. I mean, I don't think that there's much suspense with regard to this. Like there's chaos all around the board, but not here. I do think it does point to though, like that, there's 10 nominees and most of them I think are really good movies. And so this is part of why I like doing this and watching the movies and talking to people about them, is because I discover things that I might not have watched otherwise, right? I wish that they were spread out a little bit more throughout the year and it wasn't just like a mad dash to watch them all, in October, November, December. But I think it's a really strong year. I think that there are a lot of great movies here. And I think only one can win. What would you think would be the possible upsets I think
here's the thing is I think people are so confident now that Everything Everywhere is going to win, because like the common thing I keep hearing across all the podcasts I listen to is there's no consensus for number 2. There's no clear upsetter, right? I mean, I think for a while people thought it might be Tar. Sorry, that's a Freudian slip, because I would love for Tar to be in contention at all, but that's just not. I feel like Top Gun was a possible spoiler for a while, but then when PGA, people were like, oh well, if it can't win here, the guild that wants to reward box office hits the most, then I think but and then people were sort of like, oh, like everybody wanted to talk to and take pictures with Tom Cruise at the Oscars luncheon. Some people were like, oh, does that mean Top Gun has a lot of support? But I feel like that's not really happening. Banshees was, I think, the closest to a runner up, but because it kind of didn't underperformed at BAFTA, people are like, well, if like the Brits aren't really giving this movie all the awards, like what does that say for the Academy? So I don't know, what would you pick as like I guess All Quiet is probably the closest.
I think it's All Quiet. I think
which seems crazy.
It is crazy. It's not going to happen. But if I think it's All Quiet or Top Gun. And the only reason now we're struggling. We're trying to find the vulnerabilities. The only vulnerability I can see for Everything Everywhere is that for certain like the sort of stereotype of the Oscar voter, the stodgy, old white man, that they might not,
the Green Book voter.
Yeah, right. That they might, like it's a movie with like, hot dog fingers and multiverse and like words that they're not going to like. And I have heard, like we're in our little bubbles where we're talking like with people who think sort of similarly and around the same age, but I talked to other friends who's just like, my mom hated that movie, right? And so if you in a preferential ballot, if it is actually somewhat polarizing for a certain population and people put Everything Everywhere further down the list, then that could potentially hurt it in a way. So like when we think of like the Coda year, right? That I'm not sure how many people had that as number 1, but probably a lot of people had it pretty high on the list because it was a movie that people enjoyed and could feel happy voting for, right? I'm trying to look on this list about something else that would make them happy. I don't know. All Quiet seems like a weird choice. I think Top Gun would be the choice, right? Top Gun would be something that would be high on people's list,
right?
So that would be that could potentially work. Maybe if it were to happen, that would be my explanation, is that it was that among a certain, population.
Right. And that is very friendly to all types of voters. Because I feel like even if you're of the younger generation or you're someone who would also vote for Everything Everywhere, tons of people I know who like Everything Everywhere also really like Top Gun. But if you're someone who doesn't like Everything Everywhere, you probably still like Top Gun.
That's right.
Right. So, and that's the movie that you're like, yeah, like that should be winning Best Picture. So, and it's kind of an amazing movie in that way, in that like it shocked everybody with how good it was, and it really has no business being as good as it is. Yeah. And
I mean, look, at the end of the day, if Everything Everywhere wins all the things that you think it's going to win, but Top Gun won Best Picture, would that be the worst thing? I mean, like, I don't know.
It'd be insane.
It would be insane,
but it wouldn't be the worst thing. No. And especially since Hollywood is like, thanks Tom Cruise for saving movie theaters.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
I think that Oscar voters are more resistant to like the calls for whatever we ask Oscar voters to do than we think. Like I've read plenty of pieces that just like they only care about like these small movies, and that's why they don't people don't tune into the ceremony and it's not relevant anymore. And so I just don't think that they care. Like at the end of the day, and
I think
for all of these go ahead. Sorry.
For a long time, I was really afraid that Everything Everywhere, because it became the front runner so early, would be vulnerable like Power of the Dog was last year. And that people would be like, oh, like it's winning, so I'm going to vote for other things. And I keep, or the discourse of like, well, lots of people would be against this movie because it's like too out there, or it's, it has hot dog fingers and, and And I feel like we keep being like, don't set yourself up for disappointment. People might actually not like everything everywhere, but it's happening. Like the momentum is there. It's been winning lots of stuff.
Yeah.
It's like you said, it's unstoppable at this point, I think.
Yeah. It's just a question of how wide the sweep is going to be, right? And whether Michelle Yeoh, Jamie Lee Curtis, right? And we'll know those answers fairly early in the ceremony, right?
Yeah.
But I think the ultimate end of the ceremony, we're not going to have like a moonlight surprise. I think it's just, I think the thing with Power of the Dog is that it was a front runner, but it was not a front runner it was not a movie people loved, right? Like loved in the sense that I loved the movie. I think it should have won, or Drive My Car. Like I loved those movies.
Right. But it was a movie that a lot of people admired more than they loved or cared about. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
you're right.
Yeah.
You're right. And that might be what happened to Banshees, to be honest.
It could be, right? Because as much as I really enjoyed watching that movie, it left me a little bit cold at the end. And I mean, that's probably also part of the reason that support for Colin Farrell sort of fell too. I mean, I think also it has to do with what we talked about earlier, the showier performances around him. But anyway.
What's the likelihood of Tar upsetting?
Oh, it's so incredibly slim. I wish it were a higher likelihood. I mean, look, it won the New York Film Critics Circle and the LA Film Critics Circle. That's a rare thing when they both align, right? I think that no, actually LA, it was like a half, right? It was I think Everything Everywhere tied with it.
No,
right?
They tied, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I love a tie. I love an Everything Everywhere Tar tie, but you can't count on a tie, and it's just not going to happen, right? That's. I
think the preferential ballot makes it so you can never have a tie, right?
Oh, maybe so, yeah. And also, it's like it's even more Power of the Dog than Power of the Dog, right? It's like chilly and
right. It's cerebral. It doesn't have a lot of heart.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I get it. The one thing that I would put in there as like a seed of hope, if you wanted it, is the internet loves Lydia Tarr memes.
That's true.
Right. And then the whole thing about like people thought she was a real person and she's not. And like all the internet discourse, if that somehow, I mean, I think, yeah, like you said, film, like what people describe as film Twitter or film lovers on the internet is it doesn't align usually with the Academy. And so like we mistake one for the other. But I feel like that's the one place, if there was overlap with people just being in love with the idea of Lydia Tarr and jokes about Lydia Tarr, then it's not happening. I'm just pulling at strings here, but
yeah, that supports like Blanchett win, but not a Tar win.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah. All right. So congrats to Everything Everywhere. You're going to be winning lots of Oscars, is what we've concluded.
Right. That's right. And so it's an excellent movie, and in an excellent year for movies, it would be a deserving winner.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Antonio. This was super fun.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad we got to go through all of these 8 categories. That was incredible. So can you tell people who are listening where they can find you?
I'm not anywhere.
Oh, that's true. You're off the grid.
I'm off the grid. You can find me in my LinkedIn profile. So yes, I have nothing for that. I'm just here. I only exist in your on the long take.
You're in the long take cinematic universe. Okay.
That's right.
And that's it. I love it. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me to talk the Oscars, and I can't wait to see what I panic change to in the next 2 weeks.
Me too.
I got burned by Penelope Cruz last year because I panic switched at the end, and that's what torpedoed my predictions. But yeah, so we'll see what happens. A lot could happen in terms of those single ballot interviews haven't come out yet. Those usually always throw chaos into the mix. And a lot of like things in the press campaigning could happen between when voting starts tomorrow. So it'll be exciting. Thank you for listening. You can follow The Long Take on Substack at thelongtake.substack.com. Subscribe for free to receive reviews of films with Oscar buzz, as well as new films and series from pop franchises like Star Wars and Marvel.